The game went belly up. Today, Facebook said he'll remain off the site for at least 2 years. Let's talk about it with Young Voices contributor Eric Peterson, who's backing up late with me on the Final Five. Good to see you again, Eric.
Yeah, happy to be here again, Jim. Thanks for having me.
So we know there was this mythical Facebook oversight board, which I think a lot of us were surprised existed in the first place. They addressed this a couple of weeks ago, and they said they agreed with it, but they said the idea of an indefinite suspension wouldn't really pass muster without a concrete reason why. So where do things stand right now?
Yeah, things remain essentially unchanged. Donald Trump continues to be banned from most social media that we know and use today. Facebook has indeed pushed that out to 2 years, though it is a slightly retroactive. So Trump will be off Facebook at least until January of 2022 after the midterms elections and all that. But yeah, I mean, and the oversight board has come through and actually, I think, changed a lot of Facebook policies. And this ruling today, I think, is another example of that. Again, they had him indefinitely suspended, as you said. But right now it's 2 years. They said you either have to kick him off the platform entirely or you have to give him a time frame. And they were uncomfortable with kicking him off entirely. So they've settled on this 2 years.
They're blaming him. They say that he incited violent events that happened back on January 6th, but, effectively he was, so to speak, put on trial for this in the form of an impeachment. He was acquitted from that. Granted, Facebook, again, is a private platform. I think we talked about that the last time you were on the show. I mean, look, they can set the rules, but it's sort of a gray area, too, when you're talking about the former president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media company has always given a lot of leeway to political leaders, to world leaders. Facebook and the oversight board have kind of shifted on that policy. They've come out today with this ruling and said, we're no longer going to grant them their special privilege, but what we are going to do is keep our newsworthiness exemption. And they've really increased their transparency around that. So content that might not be allowed on the platform otherwise, if it is considered newsworthy, might be left up. And I think a lot of the oversight board's rulings where they've told Facebook to keep content up is sort of pushing them in that direction.
One of the other platforms out there that got a lot of attention was Parler, and it was billed as, they called it, a free speech alternative. It became very popular for people on the right to communicate with. That ran into some problems in and of itself. It is back online right now, and it was said that after the former president was kicked off of all forms of social media, that Parler really saw an opportunity there. He decided to go out on his own. Do you think that's a possibility, that Parler can make a splash by saying, hey, come on here and say whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean, the time is right for Parler to strike. They've had a very good few weeks, right? About a month and a half ago, last time we talked, they had just gotten back online. Apple, a few weeks ago, have let them back onto their iOS app store. They were never really off the Android app store because of sideloading. But they've sort of gone stagnant over the last few weeks. So we might see a confluence of events where Parler is sort of back in the mainstream, they're up and running, and Donald Trump is looking for an audience where he's not finding one on sort of the traditional social media platforms. There's been a lot of talk, but maybe this will be finally the time where he decides to make the jump to Parler.
There's a lot of people who believe that conservative voices have been silenced on social media by virtue of this. We saw a lot of people leave Twitter, for example. The former president is pretty much banned from Twitter. Jack Dorsey said that won't change. But there are a lot of people that believe that there is this big tech conspiracy, that there is that this is a concerted effort. These sites are colluding against each other to keep these voices off. But I think what we've learned about the internet, Eric, is that anybody can start a show, anybody can go on YouTube, anybody can start their own platform here. What do you think? Does this do anything to allay those fears, or does it just make it worse?
Yeah, I don't think this decision really says something one way or the other about that sort of conspiracy theory or thought process. I would say we've seen a lot of fights over the last few weeks in between tech companies, between Apple and Epic, or Apple and Facebook.
Right.
So if anything, we're seeing a lot of competition between these platforms in various different ways. Again, I think as the sort of infrastructure built out for companies like Parler continues to increase, as investment in that infrastructure continues to increase, we're going to see alternative platforms for people like the former president to jump onto. I think the question really is, will they come to an agreement to make it happen?
Yeah. All right.